When I finished the Rodan differences video, I didn't know if I wanted to tackle this one next. I mean, the Rodan video was quite a task to make, but this movie doesn't even compare to anything that's come before, and my god, what a nightmare it was to make this video. Released at the end of the year in 1984 in Japan, and late summer of the following year in America, Godzilla 84 was a reintroduction to the character after he had stayed dormant for 9 years, at least in Japan. They eventually did find a distributor in New World Pictures, who released the film as Godzilla is Alive, or at least till they chose the latter title of Godzilla 1985. Let's not keep you guys waiting any longer and dive right into this. Both versions start off with different logos. While they play, Godzilla's roar can be heard only in the American version. The opening credits come in differently as well. The Japanese one plays over shots of an active volcano, while the US version has fire burning away bits of the screen to reveal the title of the film, which I think is a pretty cool idea. The music is the same in both cuts. After the credits, the Japanese cut has a subtitle saying 3 months after the eruption, calling to the credits seconds beforehand. Since the dub had a different opening, nothing about a volcano is mentioned here, and instead have a title saying 100 miles south of Tokyo. A few seconds of Hiroshi are trimmed. A few seconds of this guy are trimmed. The mountains exploding are played before Hiroshi's reaction to them in the dub. A few seconds of the mountains are trimmed. When this scene ends, we're put in 2 different locations. The original has us with Goro Maki, played by actor Ken Tanaka, sailing out at sea, with the song titled Goodbye Lover, performed by Yasuko Sawaguchi, playing as we see him, until it gets interrupted by a news reporter. The American cut sends us with Steve Martin, reenacted by Raymond Burr, now in his late 60s, showing him sitting in a dark room with eerie music playing as the camera pans to a dragon statue. It's never stated what this exactly is, though if I had to guess, it could be a calling to the Lucky Dragon No. 5 incident, in which the crew of the ship either fell really ill or passed away due to high exposure of radiation. After the burst scene, we then go to Maki on the boat, only instead of the song playing, he's just listening to the radio broadcast about the storm in the prior scene. A shot of the ship is removed. When he enters the ship, music is heard only in the American version. Also, the sound effects are slightly different in the American cut as well.
Hello?
A POV shot, along with the moment of Maki opening the door, is removed. When on the lower deck, Maki says hello only in the dub, and a radio signal can be heard only in this version as well. A small moment with him opening another door is removed. Music finally kicks in the Japanese version once Maki discovers the body.
Coast Guard Cutter Sakuma calling you.
Speaking of the body, Maki sticks around it a bit longer in the original. Another Maki POV shot is removed. When Maki enters the room to find Hiroshi, creaking sounds can be heard only in the American version. A moment with Maki looking through Hiroshi's wallet is removed. The entire chakra scene is cut down in the dub, with nearly 20 seconds of footage being removed. Also, the creature sounds are slightly changed in the dub. When both Hiroshi and Maki are talking above the ship, music can be heard only in the American version. Also, a bit of footage with them talking is removed. When the helicopter shows up, a man speaking out of it can be heard only in the Japanese version. The last bit of footage of this scene is also removed from the dub. Nearly a minute-long scene of Maki discussing everything he saw on the ship over the phone is removed. A scene of Dr. Hayashida coming to see Hiroshi in the hospital is removed. I should note now that after the helicopter scene, a little over 4 minutes of footage has been removed in total, before the 2 versions finally align with each other at the Prime Minister's, with the location of the text removed in the dub. Also, sounds of cars can be heard only in the American version. After the Prime Minister's moment, we cut to 2 different establishing shots in Tokyo, with music heard only in the dub. The American version shortly does get to the Japanese ones though. The scene with this guy getting his food is removed. A sign of the chief's office is removed. A short moment of Maki driving his car to see Dr. Hayashida is removed. A few seconds of Maki snooping around Hayashida's lab is cut. A moment of Naoko bowing is removed. The scene with Maki and Naoko goes on a minute longer in the Japanese version, which includes a scene of Naoko running towards the hospital. When Naoko goes to see Hiroshi, a man taking photos of the 2 united is removed in the dub. Maki actually sets this up in the Japanese version. It's a little subplot that's entirely removed in the 85 cut. When we go to the Soviet submarine, music is heard only in the dub. A short bit of one of the Soviet men saying, "The Americans must have a new nuclear sub," is removed. Another bit of one of the men talking about the Americans wanting to declare a nuclear war is removed. After this scene, we're put in two different locations. The American one gives us our second all-original scene, taking place at the Pentagon, where most of the original American footage is going to be happening at. This new footage lasts over a minute before aligning back with the Japanese version at the Prime Minister's. Speaking of which, the last bit at the Minister's is cut down. The following scene with a news reporter also has its footage trimmed down. Several shots of the news press revealing Godzilla's presence are removed. The text is different in both cuts when the papers are being produced. Obviously, one's in Japanese and the other in English. After this, the American version puts us back with the military men. The picture you're seeing one of the guys holding is actually a photo that was in the original, but was removed from the US version, at least for that scene. The Japanese version puts us back with the main cast, with Maki's paper scheme subplot in action. This entire scene is removed from the dub. When the original footage ends in the American cut, it goes right to the scene that would play later in the Japanese version. Let's stick here on this scene for a while. Interesting to note, Rosenberg here is speaking English in both cuts. Obviously, because he's American, he should be, but one thing to note is that his voice isn't changed here. As with earlier Godzilla films, American actors would often get their voices changed in the American dubs, unless you were Nick Adams, and I guess to an extent Russ Templin, who dubbed himself. When the Soviets bring up nuclear weapons are the only way they can defend their people from Godzilla, a shot of Rosenberg saying, "He's right," is removed. A few bits of Shevsky, I hope I'm saying that right, explaining how the Soviets will handle the attack, along with a few shots of them staring at each other quietly, is removed. The Japanese version of this scene does a cutaway to the Prime Minister and his group in an office, discussing the weapons both the US and Russia plan to use against Godzilla. This entire bit is removed from the dub. Once we get back, the last bit of the scene is removed. Let's jump back to the Japanese version's runtime now. A montage of the military has narration heard only in the dub, along with the on-screen text removed from the English version as well. After this montage, the Japanese version cuts to some grassy fields, while the American one cuts to a scene with the main cast in the helicopter. Added dialogue and screams of the security guard can be heard only in the American version. A shot of Godzilla with text of the location is removed from the American cut. A shot of a helicopter plays in the American version before a shot of Godzilla lifting his head to roar. This derpy close-up of Godzilla is cut in the American version. I mean, it is in that version, it just doesn't sit on it as long as the original version does. The helicopter scene is played earlier in the dub, but plays as a quick cutaway here in the original Japanese version. After that, a scene with the Prime Minister viewing Godzilla's attack plays. This moment would be played later in the American version, but their monitors would show them viewing a helicopter in search of Godzilla. A quick shot of Godzilla is removed. When Godzilla attacks the reactor's chimneys, the American version uses scenes that show people inside getting hurt. These clips would play in the Japanese version in a little bit. A few seconds of Godzilla inside the reactor is cut. When Hayashida is checking the radiation levels, on-screen text of the instrument, along with a few seconds of Hayashida himself, is cut from the dub. A close-up on Godzilla before he notices the birds lingers on a bit longer in the Japanese cut. After the first Godzilla attack, we cut again to two different locations in both versions. The original has us with our second newspaper montage, while the dub has us with Steve Martin's grandson. This scene goes on a little over 30 seconds. After it, it plays a scene that would be used much later in the original. When we get back to the group discussing Godzilla's brain, sound effects can be heard only in the dub. Text of Oshima Island is removed from the dub, followed by a wide shot also removed. And once again, sound effects are heard only in the dub. After this scene, we go off to two different locations again, with the Japanese first using scenes of Tokyo that was played earlier in the dub, before cutting to the main cast, while the dub just cuts back to the Prime Minister and the Union, with several shots being removed or shortened down to help tighten up the pace. This scene would play later in the original. After it, the dub plays another original scene with the military guys. along with Raymond Burr's introduction to them. The scene also plays footage from the 1954 original, which the Japanese version never uses. Going back to the Japanese version, a scene with the main cast listening to bird sounds and Maki answering the phone is removed from the dub, though a small bit of this scene would appear in a montage later in the American cut. After this, the Union scene plays, and after that scene, the crew discussing the volcano plan plays, which has music only in the dub, though music would kick in midway through in the original. As for removing things, there's a shot of these two unnamed characters saying goodbye to Hayashida. Also, scenes are rearranged in this moment as well. I should also note that this moment plays a little after several scenes in the American version. After that, the meeting scene plays in the original. I hope I haven't lost you guys yet. After that moment, a scene of both an American and Soviet nuclear satellite plays. This scene plays at the 50-minute mark here, while it plays at the 24-minute mark in the American cut. I should also note the text is again removed in this scene, along with a shot of the American satellite. This is just one of many edits done to the 85 cut to make the Russians seem like nuclear maniacs. Going off topic for 1 minute, I failed to mention till now that the Cold War of 85 had just started when this film was released in the United States. Because of it, the 1985 American cut of the film would consistently do things like this to make America seem like the better of the two countries. And it would even change subtitled dialogue from the Russian characters to help emphasize them being nuclear-crazed people. The Japanese version treats both countries as equal in terms of nuclear forces, and I don't want to get too much into it, so let's just dive back in. A scene with the Prime Minister going over the discussion of the Americans and Russians is removed. After that, Operative Colonel Kashurin, I hope I'm saying that right, arriving at Tokyo Bay plays. This scene would be played at the 23-minute mark in the American version. The scene has a rearranged clip, where the ship is played before Kashurin arrives in the American cut, but plays after he aboards the ship in the original. There's also another rearranged clip of the Soviet satellite that plays after he aboards the ship in the Japanese cut, but plays after the entire scene with him is done in the American cut. A scene with Kashurin walking is removed. A moment with Kashurin has him explaining that the Japanese refused to use the Soviet nuclear weapons to aid them, which shows him shutting down the nuclear missile in the Japanese version, while the dub retranslates it to have him saying that the option is still open. When the alert gets out that Godzilla is spotted, a few seconds of a close-up of the Prime Minister is shortened down. In the scene where a warning gets out that Godzilla is heading to Tokyo, the police clip is rearranged in the dub. Also, the warning montage gets extended in the dub to show the military setting up their plan at Mount Mihar, and even then preparing for Godzilla's arrival at Tokyo Bay. After that, the original has us back with the main cast in a scene that played at the 38-minute mark in the American cut, which after this scene plays the military footage that was already playing in the American cut, which also uses a scene that would be played later in that version. I'm sorry if I'm losing you guys here, there's just a lot of editing going on right now. The aircraft attack scene is largely unchanged, though midway through the battle there are some rearranged scenes or some footage that gets edited down. Interesting to note that in the American version, Godzilla dives back under the water after his fight with the jets, then resurfaces a few seconds later. This never happens in the original version, which where Godzilla is always above water, or at least halfway above the water. Because of that, some footage of the military setting up for Godzilla's attack are removed. The scene with Kashurin and his companions caught in the middle of the fight is set to happen while Godzilla is fighting the jets in the Japanese version, while it happens while he's battling the ground troops in the American cut. Also, the subtitling for the Russians is not present in the American version. A close-up of Godzilla roaring is shortened down. Okay, here comes a big change. In this scene, Kashurin is attempting to stop the Soviet nuclear missile from launching toward Tokyo in the Japanese cut. The American version deliberately has him trying to launch the missile. Kashurin dies in the Japanese version before he can stop it, but an added scene, which I believe is original footage for the 85 cut, has him succeeding to launch it. When Godzilla makes it on land, the scene cuts away in the Japanese version, where the characters are asking to get the Super X ready. The dub continues to stay with Godzilla a bit longer, using clips that happen later in the film. A shot of Godzilla walking is removed. When the helicopter flies by Godzilla, a news reporter can be heard only in the dub. This scene is also shortened down as well.
From News Chopper 1, this is Koji Takahashi with an update on Godzilla.
In the traffic explosion scene, there's a cutaway for a brief few moments in the dub, showing a clip that would appear later in the original. A scene with Godzilla walking is shortened down. A scene of the train stopping in front of Godzilla as well has him leaning to pick it up, which is removed from the dub. When Godzilla looks inside the train, a shot of this guy smiling is removed. Also, Godzilla roaring inside the train is shortened down as well. A shot of Godzilla's reflection in the building is cut. I think this is a really cool shot, but I understand why it's removed. Godzilla is walking forward in this shot, but the next scene still has him in the same shot he was before. Speaking of when he's walking, a few quick cutaways occur only in the dub. These scenes again would be played later in the Japanese version. After this shot, we're put in two different locations, not shown in each other's versions. The Japanese cut has us with a reporter telling us Godzilla's location, which then shows footage that was used earlier in the American cut, while the dub has us back with Burr and the crew. This scene goes on for roughly 40 seconds. Interestingly, a shot of Godzilla on screen here is a shot that isn't shown in full in the American version. When footage lines back up for an establishing shot, Godzilla's roar can be heard only in the American cut. Also, while inside, a broadcast can be heard only in the dub. When Godzilla is passing over the bunker, music is heard only in the dub. When the bum character is serving himself, Godzilla's footsteps can be heard only in the American version. Several shots of Godzilla and Maki are removed, as well as a shot of Hayashida checking the equipment. Also, music plays in this shot only in the American cut, at least till after Godzilla turns around. But let's explain this moment for 1 minute. In the original, the characters have this plan to get Godzilla's attention using the same sound frequency the birds were giving off before. It works and Godzilla simply stands there with no motivation to do anything. The characters give a sign of relief and attempt to get to a chopper to pick them up. Oh, and they're all being really super calm about it while this giant monster is just staring at them through a window. The plan only goes south when a hyper laser cannon attacks Godzilla and he goes back on a rampage. Also, yes, that's what these things are officially called. The American version I feel has the right idea in this scene, as when Godzilla turns around, he proceeds to go in for an attack. He doesn't just stand around like he's a mindless puppet. Anyways, back to the differences. When Godzilla smashes his tail through the building the characters are in, a cutaway of Godzilla happens only in the dub. When the characters are trying to get onto the rooftop, extra sounds of Godzilla can be heard only in the dub. When Hayashida looks out the window, a different shot of Godzilla plays in both versions. A shot of Godzilla's feet is shortened down in the dub. When the Super X is being shown, the American cut uses a different shot before the craft is fully revealed. Also again, the on-screen text is removed. When Godzilla walks through a bridge, a cutaway of people is shown in the Japanese version. This scene was played earlier in the American cut when Godzilla drops the train car. A small bit of Godzilla is trimmed down. A bit of Maki running up the stairs with a crowbar is removed. A small bit of Godzilla standing around is cut. Another shot of Godzilla standing in place is cut. When inside the cockpit of the Super X, additional dialogue is present only in the dub. An interesting change here is when the Super X halts in front of Godzilla to set up for its attack. Godzilla fires his breath in the American cut once it does so, while the Japanese version just has him standing around doing nothing. When the crew are waiting for a chance to fire on Godzilla, a monitor showing Godzilla with his mouth open, again motionless, is removed. When Godzilla is shown bleeding, his roar can be heard only in the American version. Interesting to note the roar sounds a lot like the old roars in the earlier films. Update. This is actually a legit roar from the film. It plays in the Japanese version at, this part. This roar is also used again in a close-up of Godzilla. A cutaway happens midway through the battle in the Japanese version, showing the nuclear missile launching from orbit. This scene would happen after Godzilla goes down in the American version. A scene of the Russians warning the Japanese about the mistaken launch is removed. Aside from this scene, the whole section plays after Godzilla falls in the American cut, which I feel is a better choice since it kinda interrupts the moment here with Godzilla being defeated. Also, several shots of Godzilla here are removed. Also, now he fires his breath here in one last attempt for an attack. I should also note Godzilla stands in place here for a very, very long time here in the original, while in the American version, he goes right into the building once he's had enough. After we see the Prime Minister's reaction to Godzilla going down, both versions cut to two different scenes not shown in each other's versions. The Japanese one has a large crowd of people walking toward Godzilla's body, just showing that a lot of people didn't listen to the evacuation announcements earlier. The US cut has us back at the Pentagon with Burr and the crew, watching everything. After that, the US version then shows the Soviet missile being launched toward Tokyo, which afterward shows more footage at the Pentagon, which after that then shows the Prime Minister getting the warning of it. This scene is severely shortened down in the American cut. When the warning of the missile is being announced in the city, a siren can be heard only in the dub. A scene of people running in the subways is played after the announcement in the original. This clip is played in the dub before Godzilla's attack on Tokyo. An inconsistency occurs in the dub, When the characters are watching a simulation of what will happen once the missile hits, there's a monitor on the left hand side here that shows Godzilla still standing. This scene played before Godzilla's collapse in the Japanese version, so it makes sense there, but here it's just out of place. The last shot of this scene is also removed in the dub. After this moment, the dub plays another scene at the Pentagon, with General Goodhue stating America will do its best to stop the missile. This scene does play in the American cut's favor, since the Japanese were asking the Americans for help to stop the missile. An overhead shot of the city, as well as a shot of the chopper Hiroshi's in, is removed in the dub. A shot of Hayashida being pulled from the chopper is removed. Before Hiroshi gets pulled out, a moment with him telling the two to take care of one another is removed. Hiroshi trying to be pulled up is shortened down in the American version. The chopper leaving Naoko and Maki has the last bit of this scene removed in the dub. Another shot of the crowd staring at Godzilla, as well as a scene of the big guy himself, is removed in the American version. A minute and 15-second moment with Naoko and Maki is removed in the American cut. When the missiles collide, a 10-second countdown is being said in the American version, showing different close-up shots of various characters before the missiles hit. After the impact, the American version shows two different scenes with the American actors inserted in the moment. A small bit with Naoko and Maki is rearranged to happen after Godzilla wakes up in the dub. A moment with the minister is removed. A close-up on Godzilla's eyes extended in the Japanese cut, also another moment with electricity flowing through his eye, is removed. A different shot that was used earlier of him roaring plays in the American cut. The Japanese version shows the crowd of people running away after Godzilla awakens. Some of these shots were played after Godzilla's battle with the military in the American version. This shot of Godzilla walking is removed. When Godzilla gets his rematch with the Super X, the American version cuts away for a short time early in the battle, to let the minister know that Godzilla is still alive. This I feel is an awkward edit, considering they have a huge monitor showing live feed of Godzilla's location. Anyway, when the versions align up again, short footage of people running away is removed in the dub. The shot was used in the American version when Godzilla tosses the train car. The dub again cuts away from the fight to show Naoko and Maki running down the stairs to escape the building. This shot was used earlier in the Japanese cut. A wide shot of Godzilla and the Super X is removed. A scene of Godzilla's foot coming down with people running away is removed. A similar shot seconds earlier is also cut. Another shot of people running away is removed. This shot plays earlier in the dub after Godzilla blasts the chopper out of the sky. A shot of Maki waving is removed. A bit with Maki and Naoko is trimmed. The following scene with them working their way down goes on a bit longer in the Japanese version, while the American one cuts back to the action. When Godzilla fires on the Super X, a shot inside the machine is removed, and rearranged to happen after it lands during the battle. A third shot of the foot is removed. When Godzilla lets out a victory roar after crushing the Super X, a scene with Maki, Naoko, and the bum leaving the building is removed. Also, Godzilla's roar is slightly altered in this scene for the dub. There's even a small trim towards the end of the scene. Another small cut occurs when the characters are viewing Godzilla. When the characters are running away, additional sound effects and dialogue are added to the American version. When the bum is running away from Godzilla, a recycled scene of Godzilla walking plays in the 85 cut. This kinda gives the impression Godzilla just stepped on the guy, while the original just has him falling to sleep, I guess. When Hayashida is setting up, additional dialogue is added to the American version. When Maki and Naoko are running away, the dub plays more recycled footage during the getaway. A close-up of his leg is removed. Another shot of Maki and Naoko walking away is removed. A shot of the American actors play during Godzilla's travel to Oshima Island in the dub. Once Godzilla trips on top of the mountain, the dub cuts to a short bit with the general in the American version, while removing some bits of Godzilla and the volcano. A shot of Godzilla standing in place is removed in the American cut, and replaced with yet another recycled scene from earlier. When Godzilla falls inside the volcano, an extra and more eerie sounding roar is added to the dub. The last moment of the film goes on longer in the American cut, with Raymond Burr giving his iconic speech. Once the credits roll in, the American version fades to black and commences with a generic black background with basic title crawl, while playing recycled music heard throughout the film. The Japanese cut never fades to black and proceeds to stay on the volcano while the credits roll, with the song titled Goodbye Godzilla performed by the Star Sisters playing till the end shows up. For one, like most of the edited dubs, I like how the American version cuts a lot of filler out, with scenes that either go on too long or don't feel necessary. I also notice it removes a lot of scenes with Maki and Naoko, and I could see why. Now, the actors do a fine job, don't get me wrong, but the characters are just so boring to watch. Maki's a reporter, which means nothing to the overall movie, and Naoko could have had an interesting story about her finding her brother Hiroshi. Oh, I'm sorry, she calls him Kenny sometimes in the dub.
Kenny!
I don't know how you get Kenny out of this. Anyway, she finds him earlier in the story, giving her almost nothing really to do other than being Hayashida's lab assistant. The 85 cut also does a good job at keeping Tokyo abandoned. There are so many montages that show people leaving the city, but then there are several shots in the movie where there's still a lot of people hanging around. Even when there's warnings of nuclear missiles, these people refuse to leave. Monster footage, as you saw, was removed. I don't think people care that much about Chakras, but Godzilla footage might make people sad over. If I could say something though, the scenes that are removed are either really bad looking effect shots or scenes where Godzilla is just loafing around. I didn't really notice it till now, but the Japanese version has a lot of footage of Godzilla just standing still. It's like the lights on but nobody's there. To top it off, I love how the American version finishes the movie, giving Godzilla that extra scream and having Burr deliver that iconic speech at the end. I love it. As for the negative aspects of things, well, I guess Raymond Burr himself? Now don't get me wrong, his presence is always welcome when he's on screen, but he just feels so underused in this picture. I mean, he's literally doing nothing the entire film but giving monologues about what he thinks. He's got this mysterious presence around him, but so what? It's not just him, but all the added American actors don't feel like they even do anything. They're literally just watching the movie with us. At least in the 1956 US version of the original, Burr was right there when the action was happening. And yes, I get it would be much more of a challenge if they had done it again in the 80s. I don't know how they'd be able to pull that off, but the effort would have been better than just this. Before I forget, I should also mention that New World Pictures, the distributor of the American version, actually wanted to dumb down the movie even more and make it more of a Mad Cat comedy. Similar to the Woody Allen picture What's Up Tiger Lily, which I'm willing to bet 90% of you never saw, so Kung Pao for a better example? Where they basically rewrite the whole story and poke fun at the effects and such. Raymond Burr didn't like this approach and threatened to walk out on the project if they didn't take this film seriously. Which I gotta give some mad respect to Burr for that. And now the question is, what do you guys think? Do you guys like the 1985 American cut more, or the original Japanese one? I'd like to hear your opinions on that in the comments below. Also, yeah, I'm aware there's an international uncut English dub of the film that's more readily available and takes nothing out, but I wouldn't say that's your best option to watch this movie. Just trust me.
He thought the horror was over.
They never found any corpse.
Prepare yourself. Your favorite fire-breathing monster is back, like you've never seen him before. The legend is reborn in the all-new Godzilla 1985, starring Raymond Burr. Godzilla 1985, rated PG.